from RTV6, Indianapolis This Week.
Welcome to Indianapolis This Week, and thanks for joining us. House Democrats will pick a new leader tomorrow after Representative Scott Pelath stepped down from the role last week. Pelath calls the decision bittersweet.
It's hard to let go. Letting go is just as hard as grabbing it the first time. You know, it really is. But there's always a time, and there's a time for everyone.
What do you cite as your biggest accomplishment?
Yeah, people might be surprised to hear this because they would expect me to say that, you know, point to some bill or point to, you know, some major position that's been advanced, but really identifying really good, smart, talented people in the caucus and getting them in positions where they can show their abilities to the state.
Do you have any regrets?
Oh, geez. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. There's tons of regrets, both professional and personal. Over 20 years, if you don't have any, there's something wrong. I think that the biggest one is that I think Democrats missed some opportunities over the years to really reconvey a strong centrist message for a state like Indiana, and sometimes we got distracted and took our eye off the ball. That wasn't anybody's fault. Some of those things evolve on their own, and that's why I always say if they get back to that, they've got a good future, and they can return to being a governing coalition here in this state.
Another org day is in the books as lawmakers prepare for the 2018 session. House Speaker Brian Bosma issued strong words to the chamber on the idea of civility in politics. He says he's been called a liar and compared to a Nazi on social media from members of a pro-life organization. Bosma says he won't take part in that downward spiral to uncivil conduct.
I refuse to participate, but not everyone in this building agrees. Not everybody is on that same page. Some of you here in the building encourage incivility, you encourage misrepresentation, you participate in the vilification of others, you're insensitive to those who are hurting and those who are misunderstood. And I would only encourage you to stop. Let's lead those we represent by example.
Former Governor Mitch Daniels says he thinks political leaders should model better behavior, but he says restoring that civil political discourse comes down to everybody. And he thinks it needs to start with an attitude of gratitude and exposure to multiple points of view.
I think one of the saddest and most troubling phenomenon we have is this increasing separation or estrangement among Americans, almost separating into, as some say, tribes, in which people seem to conclude that if someone else is in error, they're also a bad person. And a lot of contributing factors, I think. It's not just the behavior of our politicians, although that could certainly help on all sides. I think that the increasing ability of people to only receive information that supports and reinforces their biases and convictions through both what was once the broadcast media, now more narrowcast, and through social media. People selecting information that doesn't challenge their views or get them to think about a different opinion, but it simply reinforces it. Sometimes the information source selects the person and feeds them things that confirm their biases. So I think all that's in the mix. And I just been thinking that Thanksgiving may be coming at a good time this year. And if there's ever a time for people to step back a little, take a deep breath, realize how fortunate we are to have the country we do, the freedoms we do, the prosperity we do, and each other, this is the year.
The U.S. Senate has a full plate of issues it will try to plow through between now and the end of the year. With President Trump promising a tax cut in time for Christmas, Senate Republicans are hoping to pass a bill as soon as possible. The House has already passed its own plan. That means a conference committee would have to act quickly to work out differences between the House and Senate versions in order to get a plan through this year. Senator Joe Donnelly hasn't said how he would vote on the Senate proposal, but the Democrat says the bill as it stands right now does not help middle-class families.
What the Senate bill has done instead has gone after the Affordable Care Act has gone after health care and has eliminated a number of areas of the Affordable Care Act, which make it, in many cases, unworkable. On top of that, what we've seen is that many of the tax cuts are skewed to the very, very wealthiest and to the biggest corporations, and that, in fact, many middle-class families will see a tax increase. And so I think that this bill that they have in front of them now, that Mitch McConnell is working on, is not going to be the final product, because if it is, I don't think it passes. You know, we want to try to be a good, solid partner. I do, in having tax reform that works for average families. That's why I think where the Senate bill is now will bear no resemblance to the final product. And so it's a work in progress, so to speak.
Donnelly is also working on several bipartisan bills to deal with the opioid addiction crisis. We asked whether that can be a priority with tax cuts, the ongoing sexual misconduct scandals, and other issues in front of Congress.
This should be front and center, because there's a lot of other things on the table, but the facts about opioids are clear. We lost over 50,000 people in our country this past year, and this year coming up, it's expected to be over 60,000 people in 1 year. It's become the leading cause of death for all young people. It's a scourge, and so we're pushing real hard to end this, to be proactive on almost every front.
Donnelly also says he supports President Trump's decision to add North Korea back to the U.S. list of state sponsors of terror. He says it will put more pressure on the North Korean regime to negotiate on their nuclear weapons program. The House Speaker is imploring lawmakers for more civility in politics. Can that be accomplished, and how? And is President Trump giving Alabama U.S. Senate candidate Roy Moore a pass for alleged past misconduct? Our political insiders are in next.
For pain relief personally fitted for you.
Welcome back. Our insiders are in. Republican State Senator Jim Merritt, Democrat Kip Tu, and WIBC political reporter Eric Berman. Civility in political discourse. We just heard a lot about it. How do we get to this point? How do we restore it?
Well,
well, let's be civil and let you go first.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, we need civility in government, but we need to get the work done. And in Washington, we need a tax cut. We need to keep our country safe. And in Indiana, we do practice civility. And I'm very much appreciative of the fact that the Speaker took time yesterday to speak about it from the microphone. But it's important to work together in Indiana. And regardless of the Indiana Senate being 41-9, Republican, Democrat, we do have a large percentage of bills that pass, and almost like 100% of all members voting. And so we have a lot of civil discourse in the Indiana Senate.
Do you agree, Kip?
Well, I think that Speaker Bosma was particularly referring to, I believe, some folks that placed some really harsh comments on his mother's memorial page when she passed away on Facebook. And that is below anything I even think Donald Trump would do, but I don't know. I wouldn't put it past him. You know, there's a crisis of civility in the country, and I'm glad Speaker Bosma brought it up. I hope that maybe it'll waft up to the White House and someone there might listen, because, you know, it does start at the top, and when we have a president who spends most of his time tweeting out insults and acting uncivil, then it permeates all of society, and that's where it needs to stop first.
Well, Eric, you've been covering politics for a while. Is this new here in the last year, or has this been kind of slowly, rapidly declining, would you say?
Yeah, the Speaker had the right phrase. It's been a downward spiral. I mean, this is a problem that is probably worse than it's been in my time covering politics. But two things. I mean, number one, things were a lot worse back in 1800. Go look at the things Adams and Jefferson were saying about each other. But even in the modern day, I mean, it's been going downhill for 20 or 30 years. Social media is part of that. People can hide behind the anonymity of it. The late, great David Broder used to argue that some of this is the baby boom generation moving into government, where you had a generation that was forged in the battles over Vietnam, pro and con, and people protesting, and you've got a point where instead of working together, people said, my side is right, the other side is completely wrong, and when there's no movement either way, that leads to considering the other side not adversaries but enemies. So it's a lot of things working together.
How do you, I mean, do we overcome this?
If we could do that, somebody would bottle it and be rich.
You know, it's easy to push that button and send an email. what I do is when someone sends me an email that's out of the box, angry or evil, I print the email and I go see them. And so they know that I received it, and they know my opinion, and I know theirs. And I think it's one by one, but people have to know when they send us messages or work over Facebook, we do see them as members of the elected community, and it's damaging, but we need to make sure that we answer it and make sure everybody knows where we're coming from.
Roy Moore, we saw the president come out and discuss this for the first time in the last week. Is this now a discussion of politics versus morality, and especially for the Republican Party?
I think it's more a question of criminality. If the women are telling the truth, and I happen to believe that they are, Roy Moore acted criminally and probably ought to be prosecuted if there weren't a statute of limitations. He's not fit to sit in the United States Senate. We've had many members of the Republican caucus say as much, said it, some of them said it even before these things came out. He is part of the corrosive nature, I think, of why we have a lack of civility in government, because he and his supporters believe what they believe, and no matter how they behave, they believe they still ought to have a right to serve.
You know, I was really proud of the president's daughter, Ivanka, when she made the comment on social media or somewhere that really she believed the victims and what they were doing and coming forward. And it's obvious everybody has their own opinion, and the Alabama constituency will make the decision, but we all have to speak out about this. And it's permeating local government and state government and the federal government, and everybody has to come forward and talk about this issue, and it's damaging.
Last word.
Yeah, you have an offshoot, really, of our previous discussion, where what you have from the governor of Alabama saying explicitly, and some other folks saying down in Alabama, given a choice between a Democrat or someone accused of what Roy Moore is doing, well, we'd rather have a Republican in the office. I mean, the sides have become so entrenched where my side has to win at all costs that some things are getting lost in the shuffle. And when you talk about what might change things, we'll see what happens, I mean, depending on the reaction at the polls in Alabama in a couple of weeks and how the rest of the country reacts to it. This may be part of a sea change, but it's a symptom of the same thing.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on it. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate your time, as always. Well, it's a magical dessert destination, and the cake is a showstopper. Coming up, our Erica Fly goes into the kitchen of the Cake Bake Shop in Broad Ripple.
Nights at 7:30 on RTV6.
I'm Erica Fly, and 6 in the City is in Broad Ripple. Cakes, cookies, pies. It doesn't get any sweeter than this. This is the Cake Bake Shop.
So welcome to my kitchen.
Before you sink your sweet tooth into one of these,
she'll smooth it off with one of the bench scrapers.
There's work.
And then we flood the top with homemade jam.
To be.
And then we'll put a nice border around the top.
Done.
And then that's the blackberry cake.
Gwendolyn Rogers is behind it all. They're all your recipes.
Yes. I know, isn't that crazy? That's got homemade caramel and homemade shortbread and chocolate cake and vanilla buttercream and chocolate ganache and chocolate fudge on the outside. It's insane. Originally, it just started because I love to bake and I love to cook.
Her self-taught baking skills, mixed with her passion for interior decorating, in full holiday mode right now, were the perfect ingredients for opening her own restaurant, the Cake Bake Shop.
How do you want people to feel when they walk in the door?
Oh, well, how do you feel right now?
Happy. There's reason to celebrate. It's the shop's 3-year anniversary, and a second, much larger location will open in Carmel next year. Gwendolyn has invested a lot to make her dream come true.
Failure was not an option for me. So I knew that every day that I got up, I had to do something that would get me to next, one step closer to where it is that I needed to be to make sure that this would open and be successful.
Her success has landed her among the stars, even baking for them.
The last cakes that I made were for Trisha Yearwood and for Garth Brooks.
Gwendolyn and her team make everything from scratch.
So all of our carrots for our carrot cake are hand peeled and hand shredded.
There's caramel cake and chocolate cake too.
It's chocolate and a little bit more chocolate.
Making this a divine dessert destination.
And it just kind of turned into a place that is kind of magical and people love to come to.
It's not just sweets. The Cake Bake Shop also serves other tasty food. And another bonus, there's a window to the kitchen where you can watch the bakers in action. If you want more information about the Cake Bake Shop, click the hot button at theindychannel.com.
As we dive into holiday shopping, some people will likely dive into trouble. Scammers and other problems are lurking in the middle of all of the bargains that are out there. Our Beth Vaughn and the Better Business Bureau have tips to help you prevent yourself from becoming a victim.
Thanks, Katie. Thanksgiving has passed, and now the holiday rush is in full swing. People are scrambling to get the best deals on gifts, both in crowded stores and online. And unfortunately, during what can be a hectic time for many, criminals are looking for a way to rip you off. So we have Tim Maniscalco from the Better Business Bureau to tell us all about how to keep you safe. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely glad to be here.
Let's start with e-cards. A lot of folks like to send a holiday card, and an e-card is actually a pretty popular way to do that nowadays.
Yeah, a lot of us send those e-cards, like you say. It's convenient. You don't have to put postage on them, and you can send a lot of people those cards, but the criminals know that, and a lot of times you will get e-cards from people that you don't know. Hey, it's a nice greeting, right? So you're going to open that up, and it can download some viruses into your computer. They can steal important information, personal information, can steal your passwords. So if you don't know who the e-card is coming from, be very, very careful before you click on that. It might be entertaining, but it also might download some viruses into your computer.
Okay, use some caution there.
Absolutely.
All right, what about charities? It is the season to give, but crooks know that as well.
Absolutely. About a third of all independent giving is done between Thanksgiving and the end of the year. So like you say, the scammers know that. And there's a lot of look-alike charities out there. You'll go and you'll click on something and it looks like a charity that you're very familiar with, but it's actually not their charity. They've actually copied that website. So you want to be very, very certain that if you're giving online, particularly to a charity, that you check it out. And one of the best ways to do that is to look up on the URL if it says HTTPS. S is the important word that gives you an extra measure of security. So like I say, anybody can copy a website right now. The scammers know that, and now's the time when a lot of people give. So just be very, very certain that you look for that HTTPS and check out the charity. Another good way to do that is to go to give.org, give.org.
Okay.
That's also a great resource out there for people to check out and make certain that a charity is a legitimate charity.
All right, forking over cash for gifts, that can come in all different forms, a credit card or maybe a check even. But crooks are sometimes asking for unusual ways to pay.
Yeah, like you said, a credit card is always the best way to pay. Check is also a good way to pay. But if people are asking you to wire transfer money or give them some sort of a debit card or something like that, those are real red flags. Don't be wire transferring money. When you do that, that's almost impossible to get that back. And a lot of times that money ends up outside the country. So, you know, that money's gone. So that's what scammers will do, is they want to get your money and they want to get it in a place where you can't get it. So wire transfers, debit cards are essentially just the same as cash. If someone has a debit card, you know, they can use that, and once again, it's almost impossible to get that money back. So credit cards are your best way to do it. A check is also a good way to pay for things and secure your payment that way. But once again, wire transfers, debit cards, those types of things, be on the lookout for that.
All right, Tim Maniscalco with the Better Business Bureau. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And happy holidays.
Join the conversation. Check out Indy This Week on Twitter and be sure to like the RTV6 Facebook page. Up next, we're looking at the 6 things you need to know for the week ahead. Lauren Casey is in with
Monday, 8, 7 Central on ABC.
It's a really quiet forecast over the next several days. Plenty of sunshine expected. It's going to stay a bit on the cool side for most of your day on Sunday, but as we get the sunshine in each and every day, we'll see a warm-up move our way. So 50 our expected high. It was a very chilly start to the morning, but those numbers will be warming up. Winds not quite as strong as where they have been. Watch Futurecast here. TrueCast is going to show you that. Clear skies, stay with us. No major systems moving through for Sunday, for Monday, for Tuesday, until we get into Wednesday and Thursday. Then we'll start to see maybe some clouds move our way. That is about it. So the numbers really warming up, 50s to near 60 as a warm-up takes place through most of this week. As far as the long-term forecast, no major rain systems or anything moving our way. A 40% showers is expected on your Thursday, 45 for our high temperature on Friday. We cool it down into Saturday as well with a high of 48.
Welcome back to Indianapolis This Week. I'm Lauren Casey. It's time for the 6, so let's take a look at 6 things coming up this week in Indy. Starting with Giving Tuesday, a time after the holiday shopping to give to local nonprofits here this holiday season. You can help the Riley Children's Foundation raise $100,000 in one day. They're selling ornaments for your tree as well as hosting kickoff events for their Gift of Hope Happens Here campaign. Well, your kids can take part in the Junior Pacers Clinic this week. Kids ages 6 to 14 are welcome to participate on Tuesday at 6 p.m. This all takes place at the Shepherd Community Center, and kids will work on more than just their skills on the court. They'll also learn about discipline, character, and teamwork. On Saturday morning, head on down to Greenwood for the chocolate extravaganza at the Barn at Bayhorse Inn. This event runs from 10 until 1 p.m. You can shop more than 40 local vendors. All the proceeds from the admission will support local ministry groups. We'll get in the Christmas spirit with the classic tale of Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker. Butler University's student-led ballet production takes center stage at Clues Hall starting Thursday, and this runs until Sunday. The Indianapolis Children's Choir will also take part, as well as the Butler Symphony Orchestra. A family holiday tradition continues this Friday. The Harrison Center presents its 3rd annual holiday window tour. Artists began transforming the Harrison Center's windows into imaginative displays for all to see. This tour will include complimentary hot chocolate and coffee, and you can take part in a scavenger hunt of sorts. All the fun starts at 6 p.m. And make way for the Santa train. Santa and Mrs. Claus will chug into town for a fun family tradition right in downtown Bargersville on Saturday. Grab the kids, head to Main Street between 3 and 5 p.m. for a chance to meet Santa and some of his helpers on board this Santa train straight from the North Pole. That's what's on tap this week in Indy. Back to you.
Thanks, Lauren. Thank you for joining us for Indianapolis This Week. For our entire team, have a great Sunday.